What's going on, guys? It's Scott and we're back for the second segment of learning how to handicap horse races. I am in the basement today. I got my horse racing painting. I got my autographed Bob Baffert hat. He was at Parks this year, which is my local track. He came for the Pennsylvania Derby and he won that race with West Coast. And above that, I have a shrine to my 2007 Kentucky Derby trifecta hit, the biggest bid I've ever had in my life. I'm also rocking the Kentucky Derby shirt. Anyway, let's get right into it. So this segment is on class when analyzing horse racing. So class you can think of as how prestigious is the race. There's many different levels of classes. And if we take a look at the example that I had in the video yesterday, right here, you can see that for this race, it is the Ecclesiastic Stakes, shortened by ECC LSTC up in the corner, and it's 75K. So this is a stakes race. It lists the name of the stakes, and the purse, or how much money is in the race as a total, is 75K. It is a stakes race, so it is pretty prestigious. Now, if you're just starting out, how would you know if this is a prestigious race? How would you know if it's going to be a tough race? Just based on the name or the type of the race alone. So over here, I have a list of what I consider from going from bottom to top, the weakest competition of race to the toughest competition of race. And this is for North America racing. In Europe, it's groups. In North America, they're called graded stakes, which is the most prestigious. But it starts all the way at the bottom at maiden claimers and maiden special weights. So maiden races are races in which none of the horses have ever won a race. So as you can imagine, the competition is pretty weak compared to all other types of races because none of the horses have won yet. So you have no idea who's going to show up that day to win the race. Sometimes when you look at horses, they'll go stretches of like 20 to 30 races even where they don't win. Some racehorses don't even win in their lifetime, no matter how weak the race is. Sometimes they just can't win races. So maiden races, nobody has won. Oftentimes these are the types of races where the most money is made because essentially anything can happen. A lot of different circumstances come into play. You know, the horses, it might be their first time on the racetrack. They don't know in terms of racing, not in terms of workouts, but they don't necessarily know what to do. They can act goofy. They can start, bobbing in and out because they're not sure what to do. They might react to crowd noises in a weird way. There's a lot of things that can happen in maiden races. This is usually where you can make your money. There are a lot of trainers that'll specialize in maiden races, so it might only take them 1 or 2 starts, and then they got the horse all wired up and cracked up to go, and they're bound to win within 5 races. Now, even starting at maiden races, there's also different varying levels of difficulty for maiden races. For example, if it is a maiden claimer, okay, that means that even if the horse wins, a claiming race means that theoretically anyone outside of the race can buy that horse right then and there after the race, as long as there's no veterinarian issues. So you have to think of it with a grain of salt. So if it's a maiden claimer, which means even if they win the race, they could theoretically leave your barn, you kind of have to think in the back of your head when you're handicapping, okay, if they're willing to give up the horse even after one win, they probably aren't thinking too highly of the horse, because they also have the option of maiden special weights and maiden starter races where they can't get claimed. So even if they finish last, even if they finish first, there's no possible way that the horse gets taken away from the barn and the trainer and the owner. But if they're in a claiming race, you could theoretically lose the horse right after the race. So after your maiden claiming races, let's say the horse won, so it graduates, there's many different options. You can go to the claiming ranks, which is usually the next higher step up. There's allowance races, which have certain certain aspects of the race where it's like, oh, okay, it's 3-year-olds or horses that never won more than 2 races in their life, special conditions. And then you can go up to stakes races, and at the top of the crop is grade 1s, grade 2s, grade 3s, grade 1 being the highest. But class is very important in terms of handicapping, because you have to figure out where a horse belongs. So if a horse was in maiden races, so the lowest competition, for 10 races, and he or she finally broke the maiden and won a race at race 11, and then the trainers just put them in a stakes race. I don't even know how they would qualify, but if they put them in a stakes race, then you're going to have a pretty good idea that that horse has no business being there, okay? So as a handicap, you say, okay, they're putting him in a stakes race after a maiden claiming race after they couldn't win 10 races in a row. So this is a signal in the back of your head, okay, they probably have no shot. And this is important because horses can jump from classes and different types of races all the time. As soon as they break that maiden, they can go anywhere from claiming, they can go to allowance, they can go to starter allowance, anywhere. So you have to be mind of what type of competition has the horse been facing all this time. That's one of the key aspects when you go to local tracks, not necessarily the major tracks, because a lot of the horses that win a race, say you're at Parks or at Penn National or one of the smaller end tracks, right? They tend to race each other a lot because they're not ready for graded stakes competitions or open stakes, but they're a good, claiming level horse or allowance type horse, and they typically stay in that competition for the rest of their life. So you have to realize that if they've been doing, 10 allowance races in a row and all of a sudden they go to stakes races, or if they've been doing 10 allowances and all of a sudden they go to claiming races, that should signal something in the back of your head that either the trainer has confidence that they're going to do a lot better, or the trainer is trying to get rid of them and they dump them in a claiming race. That's another aspect in handicapping that a lot of people don't consider with class, that if you have a horse that's been in 100K races, so pretty prestigious, 100K is a lot of money for the purse, and they do okay, they come in like 3rd or 4th, and then all of a sudden they go to like a $30,000 claimer, so they could lose the horse. So they were just in a stakes race or a high optional race for 100K, and all of a sudden they decide to put him in a $30,000 claimer. Now, right off the bat, you might think, okay, well, the horse should win, right? Been facing much tougher competition and should pretty much overlay over the field, which is true on paper. This is why they run the races. In some rare cases, the trainer or the owner just wants to get rid of the horse, so they'll put him in the claiming race and they'll either win and they get rid of him, or they find something that they don't like with the horse and they'll put him in the claiming races hoping they get claimed so they don't have to deal with it anymore because they don't like the potential or the way that the horse is progressing throughout its career. So they'll dump him in the claiming races and they have no intention of winning. They just try to get rid of it with the hopes of, oh, look, they got a 3rd or 4th in a much tougher race. Maybe I'll take them and, train them myself and see where I can get. So classes, grade 1 is the highest. The Kentucky Derby is a grade 1 race. But it's not only about just the type of race in terms of class, like the grade 1s, or if it's just a name stakes or optional claimer. It's also about the conditions of the race. So the Kentucky Derby, for example, is a good example. It's a grade 1 race, which means it's the highest class there is in North America. However, only 3-year-old males, well, I shouldn't say males, only 3-year-olds can race in it. So in that aspect, yes, it's a grade 1, so it's the highest competition. However, it's only 3-year-olds. And typically when horses get older, they become a lot better race horses. They're familiar with racing, they're familiar with what goes on and how to race and what positions they're typically in and taking dirt in their face. They're used to the racetrack. and they become much stronger. You know, much like a human, when they grow up, they become stronger. Just, they don't even have to lift weights or anything. It's just naturally progressing through your life. The same thing happens with horses. So even if you're looking at something like a claiming level, you know, a lower level, but if it's for 4-year-olds and up, then they're going to be tougher horses than if it was just 3-year-olds and up, because then you can have 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, as opposed to just 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds. Are going to be much saltier, older horses who are developed better. And this works both ways. If you see a horse who's a 3-year-old and he's in 3-year-old and up races, not just restricted to 3-year-olds, then he or she's been facing better competition. So he could be racing against 4 and 5-year-olds who are already stronger developed. And if he's holding his own and he's doing well in these races, well, that could be key, because if he goes into his next race and he only faces 3-year-olds and 3-year-olds only, well, he's already faced 4 and 5-year-olds. He has a better step on the competition. So this has been class. Class is probably the most common way to handicap races. It's almost the first thing you look at. If it's a stakes race and you see that all the horses have been in stakes races before, well, then you can pretty much just, go down the line and say, okay, all these horses qualify for the race. They're bound to run well because they've been in this situation before. And then you got to look at it from the aspect of, okay, they're stepping up in class or they're dropping in class. You'll hear that a lot around horse racing. Stepping up in class means they're going from a lower level to a higher level. And then obviously dropping down in class means they're going from higher to lower. So like a graded stakes to a name stakes or optional claimer or something like that. I hope this video has been informative on class. If there are any questions, please, I love it. This is my passion. Leave a comment down below. I'll be happy to answer it. I'm actually going over everything that I have in my own book. If you're interested, I leave an ebook down in the description below. I read it. I'm not trying to rip you off, guys. It's 99 cents. And if you don't read it, big deal. I'm going to cover everything in the videos right now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.